Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Self Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self publishing and marketing your books. My name is Morgan Lee, and I'm here with my two hosts.
I'm Shannon, writing under the pen name SD Huston.
And I'm Ben Pick.
And we are here today with indie and nonfiction author Heidi Thorne. We're going to ask her questions about her self-publishing journey and how she markets her books. But before we get into that and meeting our guests, do you all have any news or points of interest you'd like to let our viewers and listeners know about?
Yeah. So right now, at the time of this recording, we just finished exchanging all of our pages with each other, with me and Morgan, and we're into our editing and revising, or whatever revising we have left to do, and hopefully get that out to our editors. I know mine's going May 1st. I don't know if you've got a date already set up for yours, but not yet. Still doing revising.
And I have no idea where I'll be. I'm also working on my debut novel, but I have no idea where I'll be with that at when this gets uploaded. So instead, I'll just say that I post weekly writing videos on Monday nights at 7 p.m. as Running to Write. So check them out.
Nice. So for me, like Shannon said, we just finished exchanging chapters. So I'm finishing up book 2 of my trilogy and deep into plotting and drafting book 3. And as far as my channel goes, I should be posting regular content now that all of the craziness of trying to get book 2 done is now finished. So that's all I have going on. So let's talk about our guest author today. Dr. Heidi Thorne is a nonfiction author and self-publishing advocate. While she has been writing and self-publishing for many years, her first official self-published book on Amazon was launched in 2011. In addition to a long career in sales and advertising, she was a trade newspaper editor for 15 years and taught business courses at the college level for 5 years. Through her podcast, The Heidi Thorne Show, YouTube channel, blog, and courses on Udemy, she shares her publishing and business experience to help authors avoid embarrassing and expensive mistakes when self-publishing. So welcome, Heidi Thorne.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Would you like to take a moment just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I think you did a pretty good job right there. And of course, as we talk more about the questions that you folks have, I think you'll get to know me just a little bit more. Or a little bit better, let's say.
Yes. All right. So before we jump into the questions of self-publishing and marketing, could you tell us what made you start writing?
Actually, it was a very strange path to writing. Okay. I've been in business for most of my career, and one of the jobs that I had was in sales. And prior to that, through school and whatnot, I basically used writing functionally, what I would say. You know, I knew how to write and how to write well, but I didn't think of it any more than that. So I get this job in sales in the trade show arena. And if you know what the trade show business is like, you know that it's a lot of peak and valley throughout the year. And there are some really dead zones during the year. And so they had these sales letters that they wanted us to use for the show materials to try and get exhibitors in, because I was soliciting exhibitors to get into these big national trade shows. And these sales letters, these boilerplate ones, were the most boring things I have ever read in my life. It was the "Dear Sir, enclosed please find our brochure, the end," you know, and I thought that is so super boring. So I rewrote all these letters, and I did them with a creative flair. Like some of them would be poetry or humor or something funny, you know, things like that. And so I got a reputation as, one of them called me the golden pen around there. So I would start doing it for other people too. And it landed me a job in the marketing side of it, which was all copywriting, press release writing, PR, all of that. So that's how I started writing, and I was able to actually see that I could leverage those writing skills into something else. So that was my path to writing as a career.
To transition from your overall career, what drew you to write and publish specifically in nonfiction?
Okay, well, because I only read nonfiction, and I don't really read fiction by choice, and I'm sorry. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but really, I've read a couple fiction books for friends, kind of out of obligation. But other than that, I don't think I've really actually fully read a novel since maybe the 1980s. I mean, seriously, I do not read fiction. I wait for the movie to come out. But here's the thing, I am really on the business side of all of this, so I watch what's going on in all those markets in publishing, whether it be fiction or nonfiction or anything else. So I watch all those markets. It's just I'm not really a good consumer in that. And as for nonfiction, it helped me accomplish the goals that I wanted for self-publishing, which was to build my entrepreneurial or small business. And that's really how that all got started. It was really more for my own business. And that's why nonfiction works for that.
Now, most of your nonfiction books are business related, using your experience from sales, advertising, publishing, etc. What inspired you to write that first novel?
I don't know if I would say I was quote unquote inspired. My first book in the self-publishing era, and I call the self-publishing era is like when Amazon and CreateSpace and all of that started coming out. It was written and published as part of my business marketing objective. It was what they call a lead generation, thought leadership, or business card book. It's one that establishes you as a subject matter expert. So that's what really, I don't know if it inspired is the word, but that's what prompted me to even write the book.
So what drew you to self-publishing instead of going the traditional route?
Well, because my first book was designed to be a lead generator for my business, usually that's not the type of book a traditional publisher wants to take on. It's just not in their best interest. And also, long before that era came along, or what I call the modern self-publishing era, let's say in the 1990s, I was self-publishing books to use in the courses I was teaching. So that's how I really got started. And it was really hard back then, trust me. There was nothing like CreateSpace or anything like that. I mean, you had to go to a commercial printer. You had to get your own ISBN numbers. I mean, it was just crazy. And so I was really glad when that whole era dawned and self-publishing became more affordable. And it became easier to do.
And I actually researched it back in the 90s, self-publishing myself, and realized how difficult that would be.
Oh, it was just insane. It was just nuts.
You have a lot of experience and years in self-publishing, similar to some of the guests we've had on before. Mm-hmm. And I think they've kind of answered the same way, like what misconceptions did you have about self-publishing? But you may have come during the time period where there wasn't a lot of people talking about self-publishing. But was there anything that you can think of?
Well, surprisingly, I didn't really have a lot of misconceptions about publishing or self-publishing because I had been in business publishing for the newspaper and advertising and all of that for the majority of my career. I really didn't have any illusions as to what this was going to be. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be a marketing challenge. So I really didn't have a lot of misconceptions about what it involved. And because I was writing more for a business nonfiction effort as opposed to fiction, even the writing wasn't even part of that whole misconception picture. So yeah, no, I didn't really have a whole lot of illusions about it. No.
Would you ever consider traditionally publishing?
No, or at least not. No. I can say that pretty quickly. One, because I'm a control freak, and also I have an entrepreneurial streak. So publishing is more of a business or part of my business. And one of my author friends did get a book deal for a business nonfiction book, and her advance was okay. I didn't know if it was on the scale of good or bad, but I thought she probably could have gotten more. But after she got that book deal, she was prohibited from repurposing any of that material in something else, or even quoting from her own book. And she didn't get any discounts on author copies, and the publisher got first rights to her second book. So that's a no for me. I mean, I just don't, it's too restrictive, and I just don't see any real value with it. Although you can make, in all honesty, she probably made more money that way, and it was part of her career objective. It was a great thing to put on her resume. But for me, it just wasn't that part of an important deal for me. So I just, no traditional publishing for me.
So did anyone or anything inspire you to self-publish?
Well, I have a friend who is in the events industry. His name is Adrian Seeger, and he's also a particle physicist in a past life. I mean, I don't even know how I got in touch with him. I mean, he's amazing. And he was from the UK, transplanted to the US, and he, in his follow-up careers, he does a lot of conference management. So he had just done his book on conference management, and it turned out great. He self-published it. It looked amazing, and that was just kind of as this new self-publishing era was dawning. And I said, wow, look at, you did that. And he kind of walked me through the process, and he put me in touch with the company he used to help him self-publish it. And I used them for my first book. And I moved it to Kindle Direct Publishing later. But it was a great experience, and I learned a lot from both him and the company that he recommended. So that was the spark that got me into this modern self-publishing era. So.
Besides your nonfiction works, you've also gone into coloring books. What went into the decision to switch? I mean, that's pretty drastic, in my
It
opinion.
is drastic. It's totally drastic.
So what went into the decision to make the switch, and then how did the publishing process differ between the two mediums?
Sure. I had been seeing some people dabbling. Some of my friends were dabbling in what are called low content books. And that would be coloring books, puzzle books, journals, that sort of thing. And I had done a couple of journals type books in the past. And so I found out about this whole coloring thing, that it was even a possibility for someone like me, from Dale Roberts of the Self-Publishing with Dale podcast and videos and all that stuff. And I guess he's going to be at the Writers Conference, so he's amazing. And he interviewed Anne Manera, who has published literally hundreds of books on Amazon, hundreds of coloring books and art instruction books. And Anne and I connected. And as I watched her and her work, I realized, hey, I could try this as well. And I always want to experiment. As I share my experience on my YouTube channel and podcast and all of that, I want to have tried these things or done enough research so that I can share it with my audience. So that it was more of an experiment than anything. And it's pretty much the same thing as doing a regular book, except it's more graphics than it is a lot of text. And it's the same KDP process. You upload it as a PDF so that all of the graphics and everything stays in place and it looks right at the end. But what was really, and I'm not an artist either, I can do a lot of like photo manipulation and that sort of thing. So that's how I created that whole work. But what I found interesting and frustrating about this whole thing is that my coloring book was my top selling book last year. And that's one I wrote very little for. And so my writer ego kind of took a hit. But, hey, if you're selling it, oh, well, it doesn't matter.
So you've been self-publishing for over a decade. So can you tell us a little bit how the self-publishing industry has changed over time?
As the barriers to self-publishing, like Shannon and I were talking about earlier, about the whole production process, that is almost disappeared. There are almost zero barriers to publishing ebooks, print books, anything, even hardcovers now through KDP. There's just really no barriers there. But what I have seen as a result of that is the competition has increased exponentially. So whereas earlier we didn't have that many people entering the self-publishing arena because it was so expensive and it was hard to do. It was hard to get distribution, all those things. And so you didn't have as many people. So there was a little less competition. And now we have even more competition from the likes of social media. We're even, as I think I've mentioned on some of the podcasts, some of you may have seen it, is we don't even know what to define as a book anymore. I mean, we know it as something between two covers and a bunch of pages, but with the rise of ebooks and audiobooks, what do you really consider a book these days? So yeah, I think there's been a lot more confusion and a lot more competition as time goes on.
And I know we're going to ask you some questions about NFTs, but that throws a whole nother wrench in there because I know one NFT, the author put their entire book into one little square, and you couldn't read it until you bought the NFT, and then you're able to read the whole book.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay, I would have a whole lot to say about that on a whole separate rant podcast, but yeah, we'll move on.
So that adds more to that dimension of what is a book.
Exactly. No, truly, I agree.
So what would you say is one improvement for self-publishers today compared to 10 years ago?
I would say that, again, like we were talking about, the process of production and the tools for it are astounding by comparison to where they were 10 years ago. Even 10 years ago, when we were all on CreateSpace. I don't know how many of you were actually doing it at that time, but I mean, it was hard. You had to have, like, the layout had to be perfect, and there was just it was a mess. And so I think the process and tools are so much better than they ever were in the past, and they just continue to improve. Now you've got Kindle Create, and basically I've tried that. And I've done it for a few of my books. It's still not there. There are a lot of what I call non-standard things still that they have to work on, such as like widows and orphans and stuff aren't perfect. But overall, I mean, basically you can dump a Word document in there. It sets up all the pages and bombs away. So it is, the tools are much, much better and cheaper.
That's great. From your point of view, what is your greatest publishing success?
I don't know if I would consider myself successful in the traditional sense of being like a book sales superstar, or that, I made millions of dollars from it. I have some books that have sold better than others. My first book is still my top selling book year after year. And that's been over 10 years now. And I'm shocked that the coloring book sells. And here's the thing. I like the process and I like experimenting with things. So if that's what success is, then I guess I'm successful. I'm really more of an analyst and a researcher, so I don't get really jazzed up about being a bestseller or any of the other author success markers. So I don't know if I could even define success.
I think we can define it by our own individual idea of what success would look like to us.
I would say that's very true. Very true.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's whatever makes you feel the best.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been the least favorite part of your indie writing to publishing journey?
Honestly, even though there's been challenges over the years, as the tools were much worse in the past, still, even then, I can honestly say that I don't have a least favorite part. I mean, I like all phases of it. And I know that most authors don't. They like the writing, they like maybe getting their book cover together, but then when it comes to the sales and marketing of it, then that's a hard no for them. And for me, I mean, because that was my career for so many years, it doesn't even faze me. So I don't think there's a least favorite part. There's just different phases of it.
I definitely don't like the marketing, but I think what I enjoy is I also like researching. I love researching.
Right.
I love finding new information. I just absorb new information all the time.
That's me.
And so I think, switching my researching from the book writing phase to the marketing phase,
Right.
I've enjoyed that part and seeing, okay, well, what if you did this or you tweaked that, or,
Exactly. And that's where you and I have really connected, is that, we're all, you have done so much more in terms of experimenting in the past 2 years than I have done in probably the last 5. So, you have definitely done that. And that's basically what I do too. I just keep trying things until, I find something that works and something that I can share, because I think, as authors who are not in this arena yet and they're just thinking about it, it's hard to know what's going to happen. And so if we can share that with them, all the better.
Right. So are you comfortable discussing any publishing missteps or things that you might have wanted to do differently?
Not really. Again, because a lot of my books were with a business objective in mind. I don't know if I would have done anything differently, but I do have to say this though, and I believe I mentioned this on one of the previous podcasts, is that when it came to a thought leadership book, I thought it would be great for my clients or my potential clients. They were the least interested in my book. The least. And as I mentioned in the podcast, I hand it to them and they're like, yeah, that's nice. That's it. And then, who did like my book? Everybody else, all my colleagues in the same industry I was serving. Oh, they ate this stuff up. They would get it for their salespeople. I got speaking engagements, all of that off of it. But for my prospective clients and current clients, yeah, they couldn't have cared less. So I think that was a misstep, but I don't know if it was really a misstep or if it was just more of my experimentation.
You also create all your own book covers. What tool do you use to do that?
Oh, come on, don't be hating, but I use the Kindle cover creator.
Hey, whatever tool works.
Hey, whatever works. The reason being is that a lot of my books are straightforward. They're business nonfiction. They don't need to, wow, they don't need to have that romance cover, or anything like that. They don't need to have that retail jazz, because they're informational. So it really doesn't pay for me to pay to have a cover done. It just doesn't make any sense. And I did try one, I think, in Canva, and I just found it very awkward and difficult. And so I just use Cover Creator, even for the coloring books, because usually for the coloring books, I usually just take a graphic from the book to plop into the template. So I don't get too fancy with that.
Do you have any advice for authors when it comes to getting their book cover done?
I don't want to get into the book cover debate here because I could rant for a while on that, and I know we have a limited time here. But I think that authors spend way too much time, money, and emotional energy on their book covers, and they don't keep their budget and their return on investment in mind. And we have to remember too that the whole book cover thing is like packaging, and it is built for the retail arena. Most self-published authors are not in retail. They say, oh, well, it's got to look great on Amazon. On Amazon, it's about yay big. So, the detail in there is going to be lost anyway. So what I really think your book cover is, it's just an identifier. If you post your book cover on social media or whatever, and then they see it on Amazon, they're like, oh, okay, I got the right book. So I don't really get into that whole book cover is the determinant of your sales. I think your marketing is the determinant of your sales, not in your advertising and your ability to build your community and your author platform. The cover is just ancillary. So that's the mini rant. I won't go into that much further. We could be here a couple hours. So, okay.
A whole nother show. So besides self-publishing and creating your own book covers, you stay busy with your podcast and YouTube channel, The Heidi Thorne Show. Back in January of this year on your podcast, you talked about NFTs. Mm-hmm. This is something I've just started delving into, but I find the idea of NFTs to be exciting and something that could change how authors handled their intellectual property. Could you briefly explain what NFTs are for an audience who may not be familiar with this term?
Sure. And again, this is one of those topics that we could go on for hours because it is extremely complex. But just in a very brief description, an NFT is a non-fungible token. So what does that mean? Basically, it's a digital receipt of sorts that marks the sales and ownerships of an asset, whether that's digital or physical. And for publishing and the creative markets, it could be digital assets such as graphics, photos, videos, writing, songs, or even more exotic things. So for example, there could be a sports highlight of the winning touchdown in such and such Super Bowl. That could be a collectible. And some NFTs also include, merchandise such as autographs or events or experiences or other benefits. And so you're probably thinking, well, I saw that sports highlight on TV. How can it be sold? It's the file of that art or whatever commemorates that artwork or that event or that memory. And it might be seen and used all over the internet already, but you do get ownership to the digital file. Now, the creator may still have rights to make money off of it through publishing, licensing, or derivative works. So I like to think of it like an original painting. The artist usually retains the copyrights unless that's otherwise specified in the purchase of the painting. And the NFT is like that original painting. You can sell that asset just as you would the original painting. They don't give the copyrights to anyone else. If somebody buys an NFT, they don't have the right to license it or do anything with it really, other than display their little graphic or avatar or whatever it is. But I think Mark Cuban had the best description of what an NFT is, especially in the sports arena. It's like trading cards of the past. So like that video highlight of a sports moment is like a trading card. And then the more valuable the moment, the more valuable the trading card. So it really is built for fandoms. And NFTs are not cryptocurrency. So let's get that out of the way right now. But you need cryptocurrency in order to buy and sell NFTs. And NFTs are bought and sold on platforms like OpenSea, Rarible, Super Rare, Mintable. And some of them allow you to list your NFT for free, but they all take a percentage of the sale. And again, it's all in cryptocurrency. And creators are so excited by NFTs because they think they can find a way to monetize their work. If they create some wonderful video or book or something, they could sell it as an NFT and get more money for it. Okay, so the biggest one in 2021 was, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if there's been anything that's trumped this one, was a $69 million went to one artist for a digital artwork of another artwork. Which was, but that's not you. You're not in that art gallery market. And everybody thinks they're going to get like millions of dollars, and you're just not. I see it really as a money grab for a lot of high profile artists and celebrities. So they want to cash in on their fandoms who are anxious to own a part of their celebrity, let's say. But I'm always worried because I don't know if people really understand what they're buying. And there's a lot of legal wrangling that can go on with NFTs, because we have to remember that the NFT just verifies the transaction. It doesn't verify whether the art, whether that be written or visual, is authentic. It just verifies the transaction. So yeah, I mean, it is just a lot to take in, trust me. So jump in if you have any questions as we go along, because it is a massive topic.
I think in the last week, I actually just heard another person try to define it a little bit that, okay, that made sense in another level, which is like for those people who play video games and they actually use their own money to upgrade their sword. Well, that's an NFT.
Right. So yeah, you can use it, but then that's like, again, it's an emerging market, and it's not. I don't think it's mature and safe enough for most self-published authors. I'm just saying. So I think right now, I just think it's not, I think it's too ill-defined, especially as it relates to written material. And as Shannon was mentioning, where the guy put the book in the little digital file, I think we have to understand that people buy books on Amazon. They're not going to want to buy it with crypto as an NFT for a lot more money. I mean, I guess what would be the point of offering it as an NFT? You know, I just don't think people are ready to buy, readers are ready to buy books in that way. That's what I think right now.
There's a lot of authors like Brian Meeks and Joanna Penn who have been inspired by the idea of NFTs and how authors can benefit from it. I'm going to kind of change this question a little bit because I feel like you've answered a lot of the questions about NFTs. But how could an author use an NFT to their benefit, or do you think they should hold off or
for the future? Right. Well, I think you know, we have to look at like those they're kind of in a celebrity status themselves. Both of them are high profile within the publishing arena, and so it might work for someone like them. But where I see NFTs possibly entering the self-publishing arena is similar to a Kickstarter. I see it as a sponsorship play. So even if you did offer a digital copy of your book, and you know that people wouldn't be buying it for that book because they can just buy it on Amazon. It would be for people who want to support you as the author of the book. So then you would say, like, your friends and your family say, hey, you know, I want to support your book writing adventure. And I've seen that done. I have some friends who have used Kickstarter for their self-publishing efforts, and one has done very well. She's on the third one, and so I see that could be another platform like a Kickstarter to use to fund your self-publishing adventure. But I just don't see it as a way to sell books. So you also have to have, even if you are going to do this as a sponsorship play, you have to have a pretty rabid fan base who are willing to buy that, because really only your immediate circle of good friends and fans and family will probably jump into that. You can't just post it on, you know, OpenSea or whatever and think people are going to find you and say, hey, that is just so fabulous. You know, it's just like anything else. It doesn't matter what platform you offer it on. It's how do you get people to the platform? And I think that's the biggest challenge with that. So no, I don't think it's at a point where we can say it's a done deal for self-publishing.
So on your podcast episode about NFTs, you provide several warnings why NFTs wouldn't be good for some authors. So what should authors consider if they're thinking about creating NFTs?
Okay, kind of related to what I have been talking about is realize that most people aren't buying with cryptocurrency yet. So they're not even going to be on the blockchain. And so I really just don't think that it's a way to sell content. Again, it's more of the sponsorship play. There are also some legal issues surrounding NFTs, and I believe I mentioned that earlier, that you have to be very careful about how you present them. You cannot present them as investments. And if you do jump into the NFT pool, realize that the IRS is watching. You know, I know we have listeners from probably everywhere, but in the United States, the taxing body is the IRS, and your crypto investments, not investments, but your crypto transactions are also taxable events if you sell them. But the one thing that I think bothers a lot of people regarding NFTs, and it does bother me, is the environmental impact of NFTs. It is astounding. The carbon footprint and the energy use is in one case they likened it to the entire energy use for a year of a country. I mean, it is just crazy. Now there's going to a lot of the NFTs are sold on the Ethereum blockchain, and there's supposed to be a new version of it coming out sometime this year, the 2.0 version, which is supposed to have less environmental impact due to how it processes these transactions, but that's not there yet. And so for me right now, I just think there's too many questions, and I don't think we have enough of our people that are buying, selling with crypto on the blockchain. I just don't think right now it's at a place where it's solid enough for most self-published authors. So it's a no for me right now. That's for sure.
Well, I surely appreciate all of your insight into NFTs and bringing that to our show. It's something different we haven't had before. So in addition to your business related and coloring books, your podcast and YouTube channel, and being a motivating force as a self-publishing advocate, you also have classes on Udemy. So what inspired you to create your classes?
Well, I was getting a lot of the same questions over and over again about self-publishing, and instead of offering answers to those questions piecemeal and to monetize my experience and expertise, I refer them to the course. So currently I have two courses, one on selling self-published books on Amazon and one about how to create an audiobook for really cheap. So those two have been doing really well, and I had a couple other courses, but they were really hard to keep up with because the market, it was on Kindle publishing, but it kept changing and changing and changing, and some of it became irrelevant. And so I said, okay, I'm going to step those back. But these two, I do keep them updated as things happen within these two arenas. And they have the one on self-publishing for sales on Amazon. It has a lot of worksheets and tools to use to help you figure out, how to forecast your sales and all of that. So I was getting a lot of questions about that. So I packaged it all together so that people could get it all in one place as opposed to scattering all over my YouTube channels.
If you could only pass one thing on to aspiring self-publishing writers, what would be your best tip for them or us?
I would say always do the math. You really want to look at your profit picture for your book and realize that you have and set some limits, because I see a lot of these authors in the author forums all over social media and whatnot, and they are just spending gobs of money. That is insane. You realize that self-publishing is very competitive. We've talked about that a little bit before, and I've done a couple rounds of research on self-published authors, and in both years, 2 years apart, about 73% make less than $1,000 a year from their book income. And if you're spending $1,500 on your book cover, well, you're already at a loss. And then the other thing is to realize that your book sales are going to peak like right at the beginning, and then it will level off over time. So I think always keep the money and the numbers in the top of your mind as you self-publish.
Well, thank you for all of that wonderful advice in regards to publishing. We're going to transition over to talking about marketing now.
Mhm.
So what marketing do you do for your books?
Well, I use Amazon ads and social media, and my podcast, which is on audio and YouTube, and SEO, which, of course, because I'm doing nonfiction, is relevant for me, but in most cases for fiction, it is not. So those are the things I do use.
So do you market your business related books differently than your coloring books, or do you use the same strategies?
Well, I don't know if I use the same exact strategies, but I use the same tools. So I use Amazon ads, I use social media, and to some extent my YouTube and audio. But I really try and put videos and stuff on my author page on Amazon. But I really don't do too much that's different between them, except the content of the promotions change. But I usually use the same tools.
How do you market your different business ventures like Udemy or your podcast?
Well, I post my podcast on social media, and mention my courses, my Udemy courses on my podcast and videos. But Udemy has multiple marketing efforts, which includes ads and affiliate marketing. So I really don't have to do a lot of that on my own. And what's funny is I've even seen Udemy ads for my courses on Instagram. So, and I haven't paid for those ads. It's Udemy's placing those ads. So I thought that was really funny and interesting. So I kind of let them do their own thing because they know how to market. That they do a really good job of that. But in terms of the podcast and my videos, I usually use social media to help get the word out on those.
What advice or what type of marketing would you suggest for marketing on a budget?
Social media, again, and Amazon ads. And one thing I would mention with Amazon ads is that you do need to keep your budget in mind. Don't be lured or tempted to go with if you raise your bid to 3 times what it is, you'll get this many more impressions or clicks or whatever. Don't fall for that. Always do the math and see where your limit is, where you're not willing to go beyond a certain number.
So would you say then Amazon ads is the best money you spent marketing your book, or has there been something else that you've done that was better?
I think of the paid marketing efforts, I think Amazon is still good. It's not as good as it was. It was so much better maybe 5 years ago. I mean, I was getting multiple times my investment back, and then it started to get very, very competitive. So for example, now, if you go over to Amazon, you will see ads for things that aren't sold on Amazon. Insurance, vehicles, charities, all kinds of things that are just not sold on a platform like Amazon, yet their ads are there. So the ad real estate on Amazon is getting much more competitive, and that means it's getting more expensive. So they're not as good as they used to be. However, they are still worthwhile. You just have to keep your budget in mind and not go above that.
What marketing have you tried that you would never want to do again?
Okay. And it also has to do with Amazon ads. I won't use Amazon sponsored brands or the lock screen ads on the Kindle. I will never do those again. They ran out my budget, because for both of those, you have to set aside a minimum of, I think it's $100. And it ran up my budget within days and with nothing to show for it. And I've tried that a couple of times and have gotten burned every time. And so I don't use those types of ads. But the sponsored products ads are the best. Whether you choose the keywords yourself or you let Amazon do the auto targeting. And I have about half and half right now. I have about half of them where I have chosen the keywords, and then the other half I've let Amazon figure out who to show the ads to, and have done very well. So again, it's the experimentation, and you have to see which ones work. And I've shut down campaigns that don't work. So you just have to keep monitoring that. And I do it weekly. I look at my Amazon ad stats weekly just to make sure it's not spiraling out of control, and then make adjustments as necessary.
So you kind of already answered if you think social media is valuable as an author. I guess what ways do you think an author can get the best out of their social media platform?
Well, I think you have to choose what channels are right for you. And I know Shannon and I have even had this conversation, about what's the best one. And I know, like for her, she's done very well with YouTube. I've done well with YouTube, and I like Instagram. However, some people are big into Twitter. I used to be big into Twitter. I mean, that was my platform from like late 2008 to maybe about 2014 or so. Twitter was my jam. And then it just tanked. It started to be not useful anymore. So then I dropped. I mean, I basically am just mailing it in on Twitter. And I think you have to just choose the ones, and you have to keep monitoring which ones are working and which ones are not. And you would think, given the type of material that I create, that LinkedIn would be good. LinkedIn is my worst channel. I have a few people I connect with over there that I like, but I mean, it just doesn't do anything for me. And I have the numbers to prove it. I watch the numbers and watch the traffic, that comes to my various channels. And Instagram is good, Facebook is good, and surprisingly, for my blog, Pinterest works. But again, I'm not really active over there. Again, it's all experimentation and monitoring. And once something just doesn't work anymore, just don't use it. As well, and I know Shannon and I have had this conversation, you have to choose one that fits your personality and fits the way you like to communicate with people and the frequency. For example, like on Twitter or on Instagram or TikTok, you're expected to have more of a constant presence there, whereas YouTube is a little bit less and a little more in depth. So again, you have to find the one that works for you. But yes, I would say you just have to choose the ones that are best for you, keep monitoring, and don't be afraid to walk away from the ones that don't work anymore, or just have a minimal presence.
What do you think about TikTok?
What do I think about TikTok? I love TikTok personally. I have met some amazing authors and other creators on TikTok, and I do like the format, and you can tell that everybody likes the format because Instagram had to copy it almost, completely. But I do like TikTok. I think the platform is really interesting, and it's really algorithm based. As opposed to friend-based like Instagram and Facebook are. So you see a lot of new people. However, it is a time sink. But I have met some really interesting people, and the whole book talk, the hashtag book, TOK, book talk, is a community on TikTok that is rocking the publishing world right now. I mean, backlist titles are being rejuvenated by book talk. And I'm worried about book talk because it's right now nice and organic. People like a book, they review it, they talk about what they do and don't like about books. But now the whole paid influencer thing is starting to work its way in. And so publishers are like, well, they'll pay, this popular reviewer or that popular reviewer. So then you wonder, well, how authentic is it? So I think it's a work in progress, but I do think it's interesting. I think it's worth experimenting. But again, you have to be willing to put some time into it.
How do you know when something does or doesn't work? You mentioned that it draws in clicks to your site, but is that the only metric that you use, or what else do you use to
No,
really...
I actually look at the analytics for each one of them. And I've done a video not too long ago about how to forecast your sales. And it's basically analyzing your entire platform. And you can see, how people are interacting, if they're engaged with you. And I look at all of those channels. I look at the analytics for all of those channels just to see how active they are. So Instagram has the best analytics, in my opinion, so that you can see how many people are engaged, how many people are clicking on this, how many, I just think that's really good. TikTok does have some analytics, but they're not that great yet. And I think they will continue to get better. LinkedIn has probably the most difficult to figure out analytics, but I look at the social analytics as well as the Google traffic to my blog site as well. And here's the best analytics platform out there. If you are on YouTube, YouTube is a complete deep well of analytic data. So if you are into YouTube, you'll be able to get a really good way to figure out who's watching your stuff and where they came from. And I find that a lot of mine are organic. They're doing a search and they find that I had talk about the topic. So yeah, and then you have watch time, and there's just all kinds of stuff. So I look at the particular platform's analytics in addition to some Google analytics.
So there seems to be like an infinite amount of marketing resources, marketing tips. How do you decide for yourself what you're going to focus on and what's going to, I guess, work for you?
If the program or the person says something like make thousands easily by publishing Kindle ebooks or some such nonsense, it's a no for me. If you dig into these programs, you'll see two things. One, that they are usually hiding that they spend thousands on Amazon ads every month. One of them I saw was spending in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000 a month on ads. And two, you'll find that there's a program to buy that's usually ending in a like 97, such as 797 or 997, and it's reduced for a limited time to 497, or they'll say it's $5,597 of value and you can get it just for $57. Those programs scare me because I've bought into a couple of those programs over the years just because I'm curious, part of that whole experimentation thing. And then I'm like, oh, please, really? They'll say, oh, we'll use Amazon ads or something like that. Okay, well, I could have guessed that. So those are the kind of programs I tend to steer clear of. And it's not that they're bad people. I mean, some of them are really good programs, but I tend to be a little more skeptical when there's, the big claim that you can make thousands. I generally worry about that. I want to know which ones, what tactics work. I want to know more about how to research, how to analyze what I'm experiencing with my self-publishing efforts. So I don't need to get the get rich quick schemes. Say that really fast.
Yeah. Well, if you can only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what's your best marketing tip or trick?
I would say understand your expectations for the market that you want to reach. And those may be out of whack with what you can get from it. And there's always the saying, there's the riches in the niches, and that can be true to a point. But if you are serving a very small niche, it may not be able to produce the sales that you want. So I would say understand your market and understand your expectations for it. I think that's the starting point, and then you can go from there.
I want to switch over from marketing to your own writer life. About how much time or percentage do you think you spend writing versus doing everything else? I mean, you have so much going on. You have editing, you have finding readers, you have your podcast, you have, so much going on aside from just writing. So how much of it is being an author versus everything else?
I would say I spend very little time officially writing books. I spend a lot of time on it. If I've decided that a book is what I want to do, then there's this all out effort to get that done. But I don't have a regular schedule for that. I actually spend a lot of time on the blog, the podcast, and the videos, because those are my key points of contact with my audience and potential readers and buyers. So I spend a lot of time writing and researching blogs and then creating the video and audio for it. And for marketing, I let the Amazon ads do their thing because there's nothing I can really do other than, setting them on autopilot by choosing my keywords or letting Amazon auto target them. So I let those kind of roll on their own. And then most of my social media posting is just to build a community of people who like the type of content that I create. And they're kind of my people. And so that's how I do the social media. So I spend a fair amount of time on social media. I would say at least on a regular basis, probably about an hour a day, social media. And that's over several platforms. It's not, I could easily spend an hour on TikTok and not be done. but I usually spend about an hour a day on that.
So then what does your typical writing life look like? Do you set goals like weekly word counts or monthly goals like that?
Well, I really don't. I do try to spend a fair amount of time reading a lot within the topics I discuss. And of course, on social media, like I just talked about. For the writing, it's on an as needed basis to keep up with the podcast and blogs. So that's usually pretty much a regular thing during the week. I try and write around the middle of the day, but sometimes that doesn't always work depending on what's going on that day. But otherwise, I really don't have a writing goal per se. And honestly, I've never ever set a word count goal. In fact, I am the anti-NaNoWriMo kind of person, and I really don't recommend, focusing on word counts because I think it's counterproductive and I think it produces poor work. I think people are so worried about the word count that they don't really worry about the quality. And they say, well, you can edit it later. Okay, but I don't know. I'm just not a word count person, so I really have no goals in that sense. But I do have the weekly, my podcast and blog, video and audio are weekly efforts. So that takes a good deal of time every week.
You say you don't have a writing life, you don't have word count goals, but you do have your blog. And I'm curious, how do you schedule that then? Like, do you say, okay, I'm gonna do one blog a week? I do one, 2 a week.
Yeah, I do one. Everything revolves around the podcast and video, which the video comes out on Monday night, and then Tuesday morning early, about 5 a.m., the podcast drops. So so I have to have everything done by Monday. So I have to make sure that through the week I get the scripting and the recording done so that I can do all the editing and uploading and the captions and all of that for the YouTube video on, by like Friday, Saturday, and then it's ready to go for Monday. So yes, I do have pretty much a schedule for that.
That leads perfectly into my question. You are basing your week around the podcast. Could you tell us why you decided to create it in the first place and how it's changed or enhanced your career?
Well, the podcast, as it is for most podcasts, isn't a driver of much. A lot of people, oh, I have a podcast. They all think they're going to be Joe Rogan, but that's not the case. Most podcasts, newsflash, don't make any money, and mine does not make money. It's not a subscription. It's available for free, and so it does not make money. Very few do. Like the top tier does. I've even seen some people who have suggested, or some marketing people who have suggested that if you're not getting 10,000 downloads, a week, you can't even approach sponsors. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's really hard to monetize podcasts. And I didn't do it for that. Just as I didn't do the YouTube video, which is basically the YouTube video. I do that first. I rip the audio from that, which becomes the podcast. So so I'm offering it in 2 ways for my viewers or listeners, and they can choose which way they like to consume it. And then the blog supports all of that for those who want it as text. Because for me personally, I'd rather read something because I read very fast. And so for me, the text blog is perfect. So I want to offer that in as many formats as possible. So it's allowed me, as particularly the YouTube and to some extent the blog, have allowed me to reach the audiences I want to reach. And so whether they make money or not is irrelevant, but they are the invite to people to join my base of followers, subscribers, readers. So it has changed my self-publishing in a lot of ways.
So which book do you feel was the most satisfying for you to write, or the one that you feel helps people the most?
I really don't have a favorite per se, but I think they all have a purpose. Every one of my books has been written because I want to answer someone's question or provide insight into something that people I know want to know about. So I don't know if I have a really favorite in that sense. So I don't fall in love with any of the books, but I think they've all really been helpful. I think the ones about networking and self self-publishing have been, in my opinion, I think they're very informative, but honestly, they're the ones that I don't sell a lot of. I sell a lot of the one that is on small business failures, and that's the biggest audiobook which is interesting. And then on the print and ebook side, it's my book on promotional products, which was my first book. And that one still sells. So I guess it's my favorite because it sells.
So what are you working on next? And can you tell us a little bit about it or when you think it'll come out?
Well, I'm continuing to work on building the YouTube channel, and that's going really well. And I've been dabbling in some poetry work just to see if, again, as an experiment to see if I can do it. And if I do, I mean, that's another marketing challenge. And I did have a video about that because it is, of all the genres, poetry is the most difficult. And it's because it doesn't really fit anywhere. You know, is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? You know, what do we call this? You know, and it's a real challenge. So that might be an experiment that I might do this year, but I haven't quite materialized that one yet. But basically working on building the YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, that was all of our questions.
Great.
So I thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Before we wrap up, please tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and purchase your books.
Okay, well, you can go to my website, which is simply HeidiThorne.com. And you can go to Amazon and just type in my name, Heidi Thorne, and look for my author page. And all the books are listed there. So, and then my podcast is The Heidi Thorne Show, really original. And that's on all those major podcasts. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just about every platform you can think of. And then, of course, my YouTube channel, which is also originally named Heidi Thorne. So that's where you can reach me.
All right. So yes, thank you again for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Giving us your insight and experience.
You are welcome.
All right. And a big thank you to our listeners and viewers. May 15th, we'll have D.L. Tillery, The Mistress of Horror, first published at 19 years old. She worked as a freelance writer for Carpe Nocturne before starting her fiction writing career in the genres of dark fantasy, paranormal, and horror. That's all we have for you all today. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.